We're here to bring a new type of news show.
New insights, new styles, and new topics every day.
We are News Generation.
Bringing news just for you. It's Friday, July 4th here in Seoul. I'm Lee Soo-jin, and this is News Generation. Joining us today is Lee Won-bin.
Good morning.
Good morning to you. And Teddy is also with us.
Happy Friday.
And both are here to speak on behalf of people in their 20s and 30s. So today is Friday, which means that we're finally made it to the end of the work week. And honestly, we all deserve a big pat on the back for getting through another week. So we're going to send it off with something light, fun, and a little bit juicy. Dating. Ooh. So let's begin with a question we often talk about with our friends. So what's your ideal type? Won-bin, would you like to go first and tell us what qualities you're personally drawn to?
Okay, so I gotta clear my throat for this.
I'm already nervous.
I'm gonna be very honest and very transparent. So appearance is not my top priority, but I think it's like the prerequisite of someone being my ideal type. And again, I'm not saying that appearance is everything, but in my opinion, personally, you need to find someone attractive in order for you to be actually interested in them. And now, if I find someone that I am attracted to, personality is the most important. And when I say personality, it's not just simply about how nice they are or how kind they are, although those are some important traits. It's more about how compatible they are with me. So for example, I prefer to eat out often, but choose an affordable menu. However, if she prefers to wine and dine once a month, we're gonna have a hard time finding a middle ground. And it goes the same with spending habits, your hobbies, personal interest, frequency of texting and calling, and so on.
So I can tell that you're trying to be careful. So that you're trying to not offend anyone.
Yes.
But, you know, it does sound like your standards aren't exactly low. But the things you did mention are very important. You mentioned compatibility. I mean, it's so important to be able to hold a conversation with your partner. And the last part also kind of relates to your values, which is also something very important if you're going to live with this, or if you're looking for a long-term relationship.
It's a very important decision. So you must have strict standards for choosing who's the right one. Yeah.
Right. So this is a judgment-free zone. So I support this. So what about you, Teddy?
Yeah, I think I like someone who can balance me out because I'm not a detail-oriented person. So I'm MBTI P person, so I miss a lot small things. So I always have a terrible crush on people whose MBTI is J, which means they're organized and they're thoughtful and they always have some plans and remember tiny details of mine and take care of things before I even notice there's a problem. So the kind of calm and careful energy is really attractive to me. And I think when two peoples are different in the right ways, they can fill in each other's gaps. So, and honestly, I fall hard for people who make life feel a bit more steady.
So it seems like attitudes towards dating have been shifting recently. Would you say that's the case, Won-bin?
That is correct. It has been shifting a lot. And I know there is a very wide spectrum when it comes to dating preferences. So I did some research in order to provide the accurate answers. And I specifically researched the preferred traits of a partner for both men and women. And when I got the results actually were quite surprising. So normally, based on my observation, not my personal opinion, men prioritize appearance and women prioritize personality. I think we can all agree on that generally. However, according to Weepy, a Korean dating social app, it shows that men actually prioritize personality of the girl and women prioritize the appearance of the guy, such as height. And some additional interesting facts were that number one, when they were asked the reason for not dating, men answered never had the chance to meet someone new, and women answered couldn't find the right person. And the second one is that when they were also asked, do you want to get married, more than 30% answered it doesn't matter. And the biggest reason for that was not financially ready, which I can definitely feel where they're coming from.
So that's really interesting because I also would have thought, to be honest, that men would tend to prioritize appearance more. But now that I think about it, I do have some female friends who said like height, for example, is like a total deal breaker for them.
I hear that a lot too.
Right. So that would explain the results. And the last point you mentioned about how important financial is kind of would be also relevant here in Korea, where housing prices are very high. So
Absolutely.
do you have anything to add to this, Channing?
Yeah, I think things are definitely changing nowadays because for many in MZ generations, dating and marriage are no longer a must because, you know, a lot of people are choosing to stay single. And I think that's really okay. And there's even a name for it, 초식남녀, which means RB-born man and woman in English. It means they're not actively looking for someone to have a relationship, but it doesn't mean they're against love. It is different from it. They just wait until the right person comes along or until their life feels ready. You know, dating takes a lot of time, a lot of emotional energy, and not to mention money.
Yes.
So, you know, if the situation isn't right enough, they'd rather not to do it at all. And honestly, with things like YTube and Netflix and a lot of solo hobby in these days, I think they still can feel happy and entertained. So being alone doesn't mean being lonely anymore.
So just as Wonbin and Channing both said, it feels like people's ideas about dating and relationships are really starting to shift. To get a broader sense of how people today feel about dating, we turned to our viewers on the Arirang News YouTube channel and asked for their thoughts. So we asked our viewers, what's your general view on dating? And here are the answers we got. When asked how important dating is, 68% of people said it was nice but not essential. Meanwhile, 22% said dating was something they considered essential, while 10% said they would actually prefer not to date at all. So it's pretty clear that not everyone sees dating as a must these days. Some think it's essential, while others see it just as a nice addition or even something they'd rather avoid. So as people's values and priorities continue to change, we're seeing new dating trends emerge. So Wonbin, can you tell us which ones are popular these days?
Absolutely, I can. And the dating trend, there have been a lot of new trends coming out, and I feel like it's really being affected by the micro trends on social media. And honestly, I did some research and I looked everything up, and I feel like I'm becoming too old and obsolete for the latest dating micro trends. So for example, have you guys ever heard of 태토 and 애견?
They're all over social media, so yes, I have.
It is.
Yeah.
It's like the new term or the new concept that comes from the hormones, testosterone, which is the male hormone, and estrogen, the female hormone. So testosterone is 태토, and estrogen means 애견. And if you're more leading, confident, initiative, and if you have more of that traditional masculine traits, you are considered a 태토남 or a 태토녀, and 남녀 means men and women. And if you're a little bit more sensitive, emotionally available, a little bit more shy, you are considered a 애견남 or an 애견녀. Recently, I've seen like even a mixed version where it's like 태견녀 and 애토남, and it's basically like when you're sometimes shy but also confident, where you're like very logical but you're also emotional as well. It's definitely a bit of a stretch, but I think it's still worth pointing out. And another trend is the use of social media. Now, as we all know, social media shows many things about you. It's basically your portfolio. It shows about your appearance, your personality, your personal interests, and hobbies, excuse me, as well. And it's a pretty good, I'd say, stadium or an arena to look for your potential partner. I really wouldn't say if it's the most ideal to find, the one and only destined true love, but many people are definitely beginning to approach people via social media by sliding into their DMs. And not to mention the MBTI, as we mentioned earlier, the holy Bible of personality types after the blood type in the early 2000s. It's used as a filter when people search for their partner. For example, some people who are like ESTJ go like, oh, I really can't date INFP. Some people think that some MBTIs are compatible with each other, some are not, so it's often used as a filter.
Right, you also mentioned 애견남, 태토남 in the beginning,
Yes.
and that's really all over social media. But I also kind of agree. And I think most people are like a mix of it.
Yeah.
So for me, I think what I can actually see, for example, like have you heard of the dog face type or the cat face type?
I have. It's another popular
Right,
one.
and there's also the Arab type or the tofu type.
Yes.
I actually prefer these. I can just look at someone and then just be like, oh, like for example, you, Wonbin, are very much clearly an Arab type.
Thank you. And you're clearly a tubu type.
Right,
as
so it's
well.
very easy to tell who's what. So I think that's also pretty interesting too. So what about how people meet these days? Have any new methods or trends become more common, Cherin?
Yeah, I found some really creative idea for new dating trends. One popular trend is called rotation blind date. And here's how it works. A group of men and women meet in one place and they take turns talking to each other like speed dating in the Western culture. And I think it's great because only people who really want to date join the event. And in just a short time, you get to meet many different people. So that's why MZs love it. It's really smart and time-saving, which means it is the efficient way to love. But each person shares a simple profile too, like name, age, job, and hobbies, and MBTI as well. Then they talk one-on-one for about 10 minutes. If there's a connection, they can meet each other later. And also, one important fact for this is the cost, because which is around 30,000 to 50,000 won, or approximately $22 to $37 in it. So it's way cheaper than a matchmaking service. And for MZs who care about efficiencies and saving money, it's a perfect way to find love for them.
So it's clear that dating values and ideals have shifted here in Korea, but what's it like in other countries? So up next, we'll be chatting with a Gen Z guest from the UK to hear his take. And that conversation is coming right after the break, so stay tuned.
NewsGen wants to hear from you. Go to YouTube and search our channel Arirang News. Click Community and leave a comment down below. Make a new type of news with us.
We're joined today by Jessie Ashdown, who's from the UK and is currently studying here in Korea. Hi, Jessie. Thank you so much for connecting with us today.
Hello, thank you for having me.
So how do young people in your country approach dating these days, and how has this changed compared to the past?
Well, I think historically the UK has always been quite a structured culture socially. There's always been rules and regulations you sort of have to follow, especially from the Victorian era. But these days it's sort of, as a response to that historic behaviour, sort of shifted in the opposite direction, where there are really no rules or any... There's no structure to dating in the UK these days. With the rise of especially like situationship culture, something I've observed since I was young, I think there's really anything goes. That's what I would say.
All right, well, thank you for giving us the overview of the dating market in the UK. Now, personally, are there any fun or unique trends when it comes to dating in your country? Like certain apps people use, or go-to dating spots, or new ways that people are meeting these days?
I would say when it comes to things like apps and online dating, it's typically the same apps. People have always used the same ones they would use in Korea. I do actually think that in-person dating meetups has sort of integrated with pub culture. You might sometimes have pub meeting, pub dating, because that wasn't typically a thing. But after COVID, I think there was a desire for interpersonal relationship, actually meeting in person, which is something that's gone up. But I think the main issue is that the UK is fundamentally a country that's sort of resistant to trends. People never really follow trends in the UK from fear of looking like they're being sort of collectivist or like following the trend. They're always very individualistic. So any trends that I, for example, see in Korea, I never would imagine seeing in the UK.
Okay, thank you for your great point. And this is the last question. How is the dating culture in UK is different from Korea?
Well, I would say it's completely different. Well, when I first came to Korea anyways, I think in Korea there's things like 3-day rule, 100-day anniversary, all these sort of like milestones which would never exist in the UK. It'd be absolutely crazy if you said that. Or something like a blind date, like a sogating, would never happen. In the UK, it's more sort of, you're meeting and you're in the sort of talking phase, and you'd be in this sort of nebulous state for around 5 months where you don't know you're in a relationship. Whereas in Korea, it's very much okay, if we're not dating, let's move on and find someone else. But I think, as you were saying earlier in the segment, I think the behaviors and attitudes in Korea are shifting sort of closer to what it's like in the UK, where there's less expectations to dating. So I think it will be really interesting to see what the differences are like in, let's say, 20 years.
Right, so like you said, like there's obviously the culture here, for example, in Korea, we don't have pub culture. So it's also interesting to see how, like, for the young people too, it's changing and where there's less expectations. So thank you for sharing your insight with us today.
Of course, thank you for having me. Have a great day.
So we just heard from a young person from the UK about how dating culture there is both similar to and different from Korea. So what's clear is that dating has changed a lot among young people worldwide, and not all of those changes are positive. So with these shifts in dating culture, what are some things we should be cautious about, Wonbin?
One thing that these new trends have in common is that they're constantly trying to categorize people into different types. And it's definitely a fun, easy, convenient way to know who someone is, but people can depend on it too much, or people can actually judge people just by their MBTI or what hormone type they are. And it can also cause some conflicts between genders and different types of people. So we should keep in mind that these trends of categorizing people are just for fun, because nowadays, both socially, politically, and in many different ways, I feel like there's a big polarization in the public. So we definitely have to be cautious about that.
So to be honest, I'm a huge believer of blood types. I think when I met both of you guys, one of the first questions I asked was, what's your blood type?
Yes, I remember that.
But I've also had experiences, actually one of our PDs, I also asked him what's his blood type, and maybe because he's a blood type B, and in Korea, blood type B, like B-type men tend to not be represented in the best way in movies and stuff. So yeah, I was told maybe you shouldn't ask that.
Yes,
so
yes.
It's true, it can cause some conflict with people who don't want to be categorized.
Yes.
And for a record, I support blood type Bs. My mom is one, so
it's just for fun. So
just
don't
for fun,
take
everyone.
it too seriously.
Exactly.
That's the most important part.
Exactly. So what are your thoughts on this, Chenin?
Yeah, that's a great point. And I think in this slow growth economy, many young people feels a lot of pressures in these days. So they became part of the Npo generations. That Po means 포기, and it means giving up in English. So this means giving up on things one by one. And for some people, dating feel like luxury, and they focus on efficiency, not emotion. So everything becomes calculations. But sometimes I think that's a little bit sad, because it means romance get lost. Right. And of course, society is changing, and we have to admit it, and that's the reality. But maybe, just maybe, we could bring a little more heart into dating. And it's okay to be a bit romantic too. And not to mention, it shouldn't always be about who pays for what or who pays more. Because if you love each other, you can spend time together without spending a lot of money.
Well said, well said.
To wrap up our discussion for today, Wonbin, what are some dating trends we can expect to see in the future?
Well, for me, if I kind of think about the future, I'm thinking that robots and AIs can definitely be a game changer, because recently there were some movies about humans falling in love with robots or AIs, and in that movie, it was someone who had a husband or a wife, and they fell in love with another robot. And I could definitely see this happening if technology comes to real life. Like, this definitely sounds realistic, and I think it will be harmful in the long term, as it will lead to lower birth rates if people just have relationship with robots. But honestly, it might be a peaceful option for both men and women in the short term. Yeah.
That's a really interesting point, and I think it shows how much our idea of connection is also evolving. And if people genuinely feel like they're being understood by AI, I mean, this can also compete with, in a way, real human relationships. And like you also said, it does raise a big questions of what it means for the overall society, though. So what do you think about this, Chenin?
I think it looks like a little bleak, but I honestly think that things will improve, because you look at what the government is doing to help newlyweds these days. It makes it little less burdensome to get married, but also mass media has a great deal of impact on the society as well. There are so many dating programs and a lot of parenting program too. So I think these shows will encourage more people to date and get married too.
Right, so as dating culture continues to shift and becomes less of a priority for many, fun compatibility trends are gaining traction because they offer a lighthearted way to learn more about ourselves and add some enjoyment to our lives. The key is to really embrace these changes and trends without letting them create divisions, though, using them instead as tools to find happiness and connection in your own way. So this brings us to the end of today's episode of News Generation, but News Gen will be back on Monday at 10:30 a.m. Korea time. Big thanks to Wonbin.
Always a pleasure.
And Chenin.
Thank you for having me.
And to all our viewers, thanks for watching, and we hope you have the best weekend. We are News Generation.